Final sprint to election day, one final chance to convince wavering voters.
It is a vote about the future. It's a choice.
We are fighting for every vote. Change only happens if you vote for it.
We're out and about across the country with leaders for one last push as they try to secure every last vote. But after 6 solid weeks of campaigning, many people, it seems, are still undecided. We follow the final twists and turns on the bumpy road to election day. Also tonight. No mercy from Hurricane Beryl, utter devastation as it barrels towards Jamaica. Growing questions about Biden's future amid secret meetings and swirling rumours in Washington. And an unexpected treat at Wimbledon. It's Team Murray Raducanu at the mixed doubles.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. On the eve of what could be the most decisive general election in living memory, there was still time for one final campaign twist. One of the Prime Minister's most loyal cabinet aides conceded that tomorrow Labour could win the largest majority ever. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, said simply, "It's over." And that was quickly denounced by Labour as a desperate tactic to try to limit Tory losses. It all came as the main parties made a last push for votes. We're alongside them as the countdown continues. We are with the Conservative campaign in Hampshire, with Labour in the West Midlands, with the SNP in Edinburgh, and the Lib Dems in Harpenden, with Reform UK in Essex, with the Green Party in North Herefordshire, and we will have the very latest from the campaign trail in Wales and Northern Ireland. We're pretty much everywhere. First, though, to our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks, who's with the Prime Minister in Hampshire. Romilly, what's the mood there tonight?
Well, Mary, the Prime Minister himself is surprisingly upbeat, spending the last crucial few hours of this campaign going door to door in Southampton, where he grew up, in person, much to the surprise, I can tell you, of those on whose doorsteps he appeared. He is determined that it is not over till it's over, but that is very much not the mood in his camp, who seem to have decided that not only is it a done deal, but also that it could be every bit as bad as the worst predictions of the polls.
How are you? Have you got any secret tattoos at all?
No.
No?
Probably not the question the Prime Minister was expecting on the final day of his campaign, appearing on this morning's sofa after Britain's most tattooed mother. For a man on a last gasp push for survival, he didn't travel far, from London to a school in Hampshire, where the discussion wasn't about policy or voting either.
I love pepperoni, that's my favourite.
With the polls not shifting for the Conservatives, the recriminations have begun early. Suella Braverman saying it's over and they must prepare for opposition. And one cabinet minister not just admitting likely defeat, but one like this.
There is a distinct possibility here of a landslide that's the largest that there's ever been in British electoral history.
Suella Braverman has said you need to prepare for opposition. Are you the only person left who thinks you still have a chance?
No, every vote matters tomorrow. Just 130,000 people could change the outcome of this election. That's what the latest analysis shows. So if people want lower taxes, they want their pensions protected, and they want to prevent a Labour supermajority, there's only one thing to do tomorrow, and that's to vote Conservative.
It has been a campaign few Tories will want to remember, from the moment the Prime Minister announced it in the rain to the long-lasting damage of leaving D-Day commemorations early and having to suspend these two candidates for allegedly betting on the election date. But the Tories are clinging to the hope that many have not yet made up their minds, and we did find some were still undecided on the streets near the school.
Just don't know which way I'm going to go. Probably not Tory.
Are you going to get into the polling booth and decide in there?
I will. I think it will be pressure on the spot, most likely.
I've always voted Conservative, but I'll be voting Reform.
Right. And there's nothing that Rishi Sunak said during the campaign that changed your mind?
No. Same old, same old.
The Prime Minister visiting only 2 seats today, and at the schools spending more time with those not yet old enough to vote, while outside there are more Liberal Democrat campaigners than Conservatives. It feels like a campaign ending on more of a whimper than a bang. Some residents in Southampton were surprised by the Prime Minister turning up on their doorstep this afternoon. Maybe the personal touch convinced one or two, but even his party don't seem to think the Prime Minister can pull off the monumental surprise turnaround he needs. Romilly Weeks, ITV News, Hampshire.
Sir Keir Starmer dismissed Conservative predictions of a landslide Labour victory as an attempt to suppress voter turnout. He insisted if people want change, they need to go out and vote for it. He spent the day on a lightning tour of Britain underlining that message. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has been following the Labour campaign and sent this report.
After mocking Rishi Sunak for not having an umbrella at the start of this election, Labour made sure they had plenty on hand at the end of it. On the cusp of what could turn out to be an historic Labour victory, activists in Carmarthenshire were buoyant, their leader bullish.
Let's go out, let's do it with that smile, that positivity, our argument before the country, hoping for that victory tomorrow. Thank you all so much.
And Keir Starmer accused the Tories of trying to suppress Labour's vote with predictions of a Labour landslide.
Cabinet ministers are practically conceding defeat. Do you believe them?
No, we are fighting for every vote, and across the country there will be constituencies which will go down to the wire.
You admit there are many undecided voters. Your candidates tell me there are many undecided voters. Has your message been too cautious?
No, it's been realistic, but I know that we need to convince people that change is possible. We need to convince people that they should go out and vote for change.
You're standing on the threshold of something big, whatever it is, something very big for you personally. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very pleased and confident. I want to now get on with the opportunity to roll up my sleeves and bring about the change which I think the country deserves.
For all the excitement here, there are still some last-minute Labour nerves about voters who are unconvinced, unengaged or undecided. Down the road in Carmarthen, it didn't take long to find them.
What do you think of him?
I'm still undecided. I'm swaying to Conservative.
Do you know who that is?
I voted for him. I did a postal vote.
You've already done it?
Yeah.
Starmer, is it?
That's Starmer, Keir Starmer, yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
What do you think of him?
Useless.
Sorry, we don't know who he is.
No. Don't recognise him. Have you heard of Keir Starmer?
No. Sorry, no.
Keir Starmer flew to Glasgow this afternoon. They know who he is here and they know what they're going to do tomorrow.
What are you going to do tomorrow?
This evening, Keir Starmer is returning from Scotland for one last campaign visit in the West Midlands. The time for persuading is nearly over. The job now for Labour, as for all the parties, is to get out their vote.
And Keir Starmer received one last boost this afternoon. And much anticipated, as the Sun newspaper finally and somewhat grudgingly said that it was endorsing Labour in this election on the basis that the Tories had become a divided rabble, said the paper, and that Keir Starmer had dragged his party to the centre ground. The Sun isn't as influential as it used to be, but it has a long habit of picking winners, and Keir Starmer welcomed their endorsement.
Carl Dinnan in Worcestershire, thank you. The SNP leader, John Swinney, has warned that hopes of a second independence referendum are at risk if his party doesn't win enough seats tomorrow. Latest polls suggest the result in Scotland could be tighter than ever. Well, our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Edinburgh for us this evening. Peter, the SNP has a real fight on its hands, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We've heard Suella Braverman say that it's all over. Well, not so in Scotland. The battle for Scotland is very much game on. In fact, one poll today even put the SNP in the lead by a very fine margin, and that's motivated the SNP campaign team. John Swinney is about to start speaking here, a final rallying cry. We were with him on the campaign trail today, out trying to cover every inch of Scotland, as he says. He says this is going all the way down to the wire. We know that John Swinney has put independence front and centre in this election. A vote for the SNP is a vote for independence, he says. Today, for the first time, he conceded in an interview with me that a vote for other parties other than the SNP puts independence at risk. Here's what he said.
If somebody believes in independence and they vote for any other party other than the SNP, then they're running the risk that independence is damaged as a cause, as a consequence, because every Labour MP that's elected in Scotland will use that as a means of attacking independence.
Now, John Swinney is doing this because there is a concern that people who back independence were not going to vote SNP in this election. They might vote for Labour, lending their vote to get the Tories out of Westminster, change across the UK. But this is really interesting because the SNP set the terms of this election in Scotland, making it about independence. They are clear that a vote for them helps independence. Now they're clear a vote for any other party damages the cause for independence. So this election in Scotland is not just about who's going to be Scotland's biggest party, it's a question about who's going to be representing Scotland's voice and what would they be saying about this constitutional question that has dominated Scotland for the last decade.
Peter Smith in Edinburgh, thank you. The Lib Dems promised a final flourish in what's been an energetic campaign by leader Sir Ed Davey. The last 5 days have taken them from John O'Groats in northern Scotland to Land's End at the tip of Cornwall, stopping off in so-called blue wall constituencies that they hope to gain from the Conservatives. Chloe Keedy has been following that campaign.
After a campaign involving bikes, boats and bungee jumps, today the Liberal Democrats leader stuck to his big yellow bus. His feet stayed firmly on solid ground in territory he hopes will soon be Lib Dem. The excitement was clearly too much for some. This was the last in a string of stunts that were all part of a strategy designed to get people's attention.
Do you think voters have got confidence in you?
Well, we're getting a lot of really good responses on the doorstep. People across the home counties in the West Country, in rural Britain, from mid Wales to Scotland, are saying they're going to vote Liberal Democrat.
What would be a good result for you tomorrow night?
We're not putting a ceiling on our ambitions. We clearly want to at least be the third party in Parliament. We can overtake the SNP in number of MPs, so our voice will be heard even more loudly. Here we go.
But have the Lib Dems been heard on policy or just seen for their stunts? And have they done enough in constituencies like Chippenham to drive through the Tory blue wall?
Not everyone's been on board with how Ed Davey has carried out his campaign, but he's actually told us himself that he thinks doing these stunts has given him more opportunity to talk about policy during this campaign than he's ever had before.
Come on, my sweetheart.
One of those policies also has a deeply personal meaning for the Lib Dem leader. Ed Davey has spoken candidly about caring for his 16-year-old son, John, who lives with severe disabilities, and the battles he and his wife have faced to get him the support he needs.
Could not be more passionate and determined to sort out caring in this country.
Those serious messages have sometimes sat awkwardly alongside the silly stunts. They'll soon find out whether any of it has cut through.
Well, one poll that's dropped just in the past couple of hours puts the Lib Dems on 72 seats tomorrow night. That, by any measure, would be a very good night for them. That is just one poll. They always say they don't take any notice of them. And in fact, they won't be drawn at all on the number of seats they think they could win tomorrow. They say only that a good night for them would be beating the record number of gains they made in 1997. That would put them on 34 MPs. I suspect they are hoping to do a bit better than that.
OK, Chloe Keedy in Harpenden, thank you. Now, Reform UK has been something of the rabbit in the hat of this election, with Nigel Farage setting his sights firmly on the Tory vote. He started with the bold claim that his party could get enough support to become the main opposition. But a string of controversies may have derailed that. Our political correspondent Harry Horton has been tracking the ups and the downs of Reform and joins us now from Essex. So, Harry, what is Nigel Farage's final message then this evening?
Well, he didn't want to be spending his final week of this campaign apologising for homophobic, racist, misogynistic remarks made by some Reform candidates. Today, Nigel Farage was Visiting a boxing club, he insisted that his party has more than a fighting chance of doing well in tomorrow's election. He's been clear that his long-term mission over the next 5 years is for his Reform Party to try and destroy or replace in some way the Conservative Party and reshape British politics. But he told me today, for that mission of his to succeed, he needs to get some Reform candidates elected as MPs this week.
It's very tough to call what's going to happen. The thing we can't measure, and the polls can't measure, is the youth vote. You know, are all these people online, the millions of them who've been very supportive, are they actually going to go and vote? I don't know. Success looks like many, many millions of votes. That's pretty much guaranteed, I think, and a bridgehead in Parliament.
Well, the big nationwide campaign rallies Reform have been holding in the past few weeks, they are over. This week has all been about getting Reform volunteers to knock on doors to try and get voters out in a select few seats in the hope that they can get some MPs elected this week.
OK, Harry Horton in Essex, thank you. Well, political editor Robert Peston joins me now from his studio in West London, where his programme comes from later this evening. Robert, tomorrow, legally, we have to stop our coverage of the election while the nation votes. So this is the last time that we're going to be able to speak before the polls close, isn't it? It has been an interesting 6 weeks, I think, by any standards. Do you think the campaigns have changed anything? And what do you actually expect to happen tomorrow?
Well, look, it's been a very deceptive battle. 6 weeks ago, Labour were 20 points ahead in the polls, and today's polls still show Labour roughly 20 points ahead. But it has still been a really tumultuous 6 weeks of campaigning. You could call it an accident, you could call it a disaster for the Tory party. The thing that's sticking in voters' minds has been that betting scandal, the disclosure that candidates and officials for the Tory party bet on the date of the election. Really bad for the reputation of the Tory party. The other big event, we've just been hearing Harry Horton talk about it, has been the entry of Nigel Farage into the fray as leader of the Reform Party and a candidate in Clacton. Although Reform's vote share seems to have stabilised, it's no longer rising, nonetheless, it is taking share from the Tories. The one thing that hasn't happened, I've written about this in my blog today, is some would say there hasn't been enough debate about the huge challenges this country currently faces. As for what happens tomorrow, you know, none of us can be absolutely confident about the result till the final whistle has gone. But this does feel like a history-making election. There's been a whole stream of polls tonight. All of them pretty much show Labour heading for a record-breaking majority in Parliament. As I say, you can't. You can't take that as a given. Anything could. Things can change after people go to the polls at breakfast tomorrow. But I have to say, if the polls are wrong, they are all wrong, and I've certainly never witnessed a cataclysm for that industry of the sort that would show Labour not winning with a significant majority.
OK, Robert Peston, thank you. Well, there's plenty more still to come on the ITV Evening News, including after pummelling parts of the Caribbean, Hurricane Beryl bears down on Jamaica. We're live in Washington, where there is growing speculation tonight about President Biden's future after last week's disastrous TV debate. And have your concerns been addressed in this election campaign? Paul Brand asks voters in his final special report.
There's a lot of talk going on, but at the end of the day, it still leaves you feeling a bit, well, you know.
More after the break. See you then. Hello again, welcome back. Now, the population of Jamaica is under curfew tonight, with deadly Hurricane Beryl set to smash into the island within hours. The approaching storm leaves a trail of death and destruction in its wake. At least 7 people have died so far. Countless homes have been flattened and some areas have been completely stripped of all vegetation. Geraint Vincent has the latest.
In the southern Caribbean, tiny islands have found themselves in the path of a storm of immense power. Whole streets have been smashed, the buildings shaken and turned upside down. Here in Grenada, they're just beginning to measure the damage and the loss.
We now have reports that about 4 people have lost their lives, and we're hoping it doesn't rise. We are using the next couple of days to really assess the full extent of the damages on Carriacou and Petite Martinique.
The hurricane is expected to make landfall in Jamaica at any moment. They've been preparing and protecting as best they can on this island, where the Prime Minister has told people they must find shelter today and stay there.
All Jamaica should note that following on this declaration, an island-wide curfew will be in effect between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. This is to ensure the safety of everyone during the passage of the storm.
The winds at the edge of Storm Beryl have been blowing into Jamaica's east coast in the last couple of hours. They are going to grow stronger and more dangerous. On the streets of Kingston, they're waiting for the worst. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
The White House has tonight been forced to deny rumours that President Joe Biden is considering standing down as presidential candidate after that damaging TV debate last week. Our US correspondent Dan Rivers is in Washington for us this evening. Dan, what's going on?
A lot of rumours swirling, Mary. Yeah, the New York Times are reporting that Joe Biden had told an ally that he thought he might not make it through this process. That's been angrily denied by the White House spokesman today, Andrew Bates, saying it's absolutely false. What we do know is that he's holding meetings today with various Democratic Party governors, for example, perhaps an attempt to shore up support there. But look, more and more voices within the party are coming out and saying after that disastrous debate in Atlanta, something must change, and that change must be him. We've spoken to one veteran, James Zogler, who has put forward a plan for how they could replace Joe Biden. Here's what he told me earlier.
Nothing is inevitable, but given the what we're seeing, what will happen if he doesn't is the drip, drip, drip will be deadly. And there has not been a single day where the story about the election has not been his capacity.
Well, Jeff Zients, the Chief of Staff of the White House, held a call with all members of White House staff today, trying to rally them. Apparently the readout from that was that they should tune out the chatter, they should continue being a team, they should get their heads down and execute, execute, execute. We will see Joe Biden later on this evening at a Medal of Honor ceremony, but obviously all eyes will be on him to see any sign of him sort of losing his train of thought, any more sense of hesitation, which will only add to those voices saying he's too old, he should stand aside.
Dan Rivers in Washington, thank you. You are watching the ITV Evening News. It's just a shade before 7 o'clock, and here's what's still ahead before Emmerdale. Whatever you do, don't forget your ID. Chris Choi will explain exactly what you will need to take with you to vote tomorrow. England players tell us about their hopes for the Euros quarter-final. A surprise dream team. Sir Andy Murray confirms he'll play mixed doubles with Emma Raducanu at his last ever Wimbledon.
And I'm at Hampton Court Palace Flower Festival, looking at how the temperatures have impacted this year's roses. Plus, I have the forecast later in the programme.
Before all that, if you're feeling a little jaded by the election campaign, you are far from alone. ITV News has found voters are utterly fed up with politics and they don't trust the two main parties to make any difference at all to their lives. Now, throughout the campaign, we've been looking at the people and the places that will decide who's going to win the fight for 24. Using exclusive analysis of data from Professor Jane Green and her team and the British Election Study, ITV News has heard from the key voting groups and has visited the main battlegrounds. Well, tonight, in the last report of his series, our UK editor Paul Brand examines why so many voters have lost faith in politics and politicians.
Yes, in our final Fight for 24 report, we wanted to look back on whether this campaign has addressed voters' concerns and the apathy and anger we've encountered across the country. This analysis from the British Election Study shows how much has changed since the last election. So back in 2019, you can see here the top issue by far was Brexit, but going into this election, the top issues have totally transformed. The economy here in green, we've got immigration here in black, health here in purple, amongst other things. The striking thing we've kept encountering, though, wherever we've gone, is that voters seem especially uninspired and unimpressed with the party's ability to address these concerns. And you can see that in this second graph. So look down here in blue at the number of people who think the Conservatives would deal with these issues well. Just 14% trust them on the economy, 5% immigration, 6% the NHS, and so on. Labour do score better here in red, so 26%, for example, trust them on the economy, 22% immigration, and 41% the NHS. But let me show you the real winner in all of this. The black bar is the percentage of people who think neither party will tackle the big issues. 60% don't trust either party on the economy. It's 74% for immigration and 54% on the NHS, and so on. On every measure, people lack faith. So has this campaign given them any confidence?
Its red tower sits beneath a blue sky. But has Blackpool grown tired of its traditional colours? At this barbecue, we found something burning beneath the smell of burgers. A frustration with both Labour and the Conservatives, and a desire among some to rebel.
Do you think so far politicians have addressed the big issues that you've got in this election?
No.
No.
It's horrible. It's horrible to watch, isn't it? I'm confused, depressed and embarrassed by the way this election has built up steam.
What's been the most embarrassing bit, do you think?
Rishi leaving France hits the mark for me.
The anger that we've got in terms of the Conservatives and Labour, it's just been back and forth, but for years and years and years now. And that needs to change, but the only people that can change that is us, is the public themselves. They need to get up and go and vote.
People are being really quiet about who they're going to vote for. They'll say, oh, I don't know, but they're angry at both. Yeah. They're really angry at Labour and they're really angry at the Conservatives.
I mean, you look at the people that have gone from the Conservative Party to Reform, they are the more right wing of the Conservative Party.
You may say that Reform's divisive and Nigel Farage, etc., but when you listen to what they say, it does resonate in the fact of what people want.
The way it's going, it's going to end up being, why are you picking? You have two options. It's left or right.
See, I don't think that's true at all, because if enough people had the balls to go and vote for who they want to, it would make a difference.
Who would you vote for if you had to pick someone now, Adam?
Reform.
I'd probably vote Conservative. Okay. Still.
Oh, wow.
It's the first person I've heard say that in weeks.
Thank you.
Well, at least he got one vote.
It's a protest, isn't it? We're all so angry. We're like,
well, no, they're not going to get it.
Well, then don't you think you may be wasting your vote?
I think that...
No, you can't
I'm not agreeing or disagreeing.
It's a way of having a rebellion, isn't it?
I don't think it is.
Well, it's telling the other two, isn't it? It's telling the other two, that's what it is.
I don't think it's a wasted vote. No. They're not going to get in. You're not voting for them to...
But you don't know that.
Well, Adam.
But you don't know.
All right, then.
But you don't know.
Okay, all right, thanks.
What people do know, wherever we've travelled, is that this election leaves them unenthused. Our data suggests few people expect the problems in their lives to improve.
But the overriding answer is that neither of the two major parties will handle those issues well. Now that's pretty devastating, going into election with low expectations, low confidence, and really a low sense of hope that these issues can really be resolved by any incoming government.
In Southport, the prevailing wind blows in Labour's direction, though this seat has been Tory and Lib Dem. But yet again, we were struck here by the way voters feel they've exhausted every option.
Do you feel like the politicians have addressed the issues that you care about, Elaine?
No, not really. I think there's a lot of talk going on, but at the end of the day, it still leaves you feeling a bit, well, you know.
And my worry is that in general things are moving to the right, and that is very, very worrying.
We know we have to have change. It has to change, but I don't know. They don't seem to be coming across with the right answers.
It'd be nice if they just weren't trying to score points off each other.
Exactly.
Yes, if they just told you what they were going to do rather than what they were not going to do.
It's a game to an awful lot of them, and as long as they win, it doesn't matter whether it's a local level or national level, what anybody does. It's a game.
This is exactly what I feel. They just want to get in. They would just want to get their hand on this seat, and that's it.
So who is thinking of the broader issues for you? Who do you think you might vote for?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'll be voting for Lib Dem.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I voted Labour, have voted Labour.
Well, what did they do with Jeremy Corbyn? Where did he go?
Where did he go?
I mean, I were excited about Jeremy Corbyn. I'm a socialist, I'm not a capitalist. And these don't seem much different to the Tories.
What I would say
it were anybody but Tories for me until Nigel Farage turned up.
I'm voting Labour purely and simply because we have to get rid of the Conservatives, because they've had 14 years and the country is in a mess. God help the young people of today. There is no future look for them, is there?
There should be a way to connect with our generation, because in reality we should really be voting. Like we're the ones that it's for, really. It's our future.
Yeah. Tens of millions of futures are at stake this week, yet despite the power to choose our direction, many don't expect the country to significantly change course. Paul Brand, ITV News.
And you can hear more from Paul after the polls close tomorrow. We'll bring you the very latest, the exit poll and the results as they come in with our overnight election programme. Here are Tom and Anushka with the details.
When the voting's over and the exit poll is revealed, our unrivalled team of experts, including Nicola Sturgeon, George Osborne and Ed Balls, will break down what it means for you, the parties and the country.
And throughout the night, as results come in, we'll be going deep into the data to understand not just who's going to hold power, but how the new mix of MPs will shape the way the UK is run.
It could be one heck of a night. So please do join us for Election 2024, the results, live.
Well, if you want to have your say tomorrow, you will need to remember to bring some ID to your local polling station. The general election is the first where voter identification is required in England, Scotland and Wales. Northern Ireland already had that rule, but only certain types of ID will be accepted. Our consumer editor Chris Choi explains.
A clear photo ID embossed with royal insignia. Ex-Army Adam Diver thought this veteran's card would be valid to vote. But when he went to the May local election, he soon found out otherwise.
Afterwards, I was gutted, issued by the government. It's got the Queen's crown on it. I've had it quite a few years now. And no, they were very apologetic and they said, no, you can't use it.
To vote at a polling station, you'll need to have one of 22 forms of ID from this official list. It includes passports, driving licences and older persons' bus passes, but excluded are photocopies, digital versions, any ID with photos that no longer match your appearance, and you still can't use veterans' cards. There's a full ID list on our website now. Boris Johnson brought in the rules, but in May's elections, he didn't take the right ID, returning later with valid documentation.
Now, if anyone knows about voting, it's the people round here, where there was the biggest turnout in the last general election. So, can they spot which ID is valid?
Would you expect the veterans card to be valid?
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
Why? But they fought for the country.
Definitely not that, right?
The blue badge card?
Yeah.
Would you have thought you could use that?
Is it for disabled people?
It's for disabled people to park,
parking.
and it's got their photograph on it.
No, I don't think you can.
Well, you can.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is the largest change to elections in a generation, really.
Officials are urging people to talk to friends or family who may struggle with ID.
The biggest questions that are cropping up is what if, for example, my passport has expired or, for whatever reason, I've changed my appearance a lot, so I don't look anymore like the photo.
Yeah, so any of the eligible forms of ID that you can use at a polling station can be used even if they're expired. The key thing is, does the ID still look like you?
While everyone's talking about who we vote for, how we vote is also an issue. Long before any results, this ballot will already be breaking new ground. Chris Choi, ITV News.
The parties have spent the final day of campaigning trying to convince voters to back them. Rishi Sunak has denied giving up hope. The Prime Minister spent the final day knocking on doors in Hampshire and says he's still campaigning hard for every vote. Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Keir Starmer's final message to his supporters was to go out and vote, saying change only happens if you vote for it. Well, the Green Party spent the last day of campaigning in Bristol and North Herefordshire, from where Sangeeta Lal joins us tonight. Now, Sangeeta, you have been following the party for the past few weeks. How do they rate their chances?
Well, they say they've had a good campaign. Their polling has stayed pretty consistently around 5 or 6% throughout. And success tomorrow for them will mean holding Brighton and winning at least another seat, perhaps here in North Herefordshire from the Tories or Waveney Valley, or taking Bristol Central from Labour. They've positioned themselves as the party that can lead to real change through radical policies like dismantling Trident, scrapping university tuition fees and reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2040. The co-leader, Carla Denyer, told me she acknowledges that these are bold promises, but she says her party is offering realistic solutions for tackling multiple crises she says that the UK faces, and she says it is winning over voters, particularly those who are still undecided.
I've been stopped in the street by so many people asking for a selfie or even for a hug. And very often, tellingly, those are people on lower incomes, people in difficult 0 hours jobs. And if those are the people who are feeling excited and inspired and well represented by Green Party policies, then I feel like we're getting something right.
Now, the IFS says for many of their manifesto policies to work, they'll have to borrow a lot of money. But the Greens say that they are getting much more engagement on the doorsteps, which they say shows more interest in the green agenda.
Okay, Sangeeta Lal in North Herefordshire, thank you. The political map in Wales is set to look very different come Friday morning. It's due to a combination of boundary changes and changing loyalties. Several seats are key targets for Labour. And our Wales reporter Rhys Williams is in Carmarthenshire tonight. So, Rhys, Keir Starmer started his final day, didn't he, where you are? Is that a sign, then, of just how important it is?
Yes, I think so. I mean, the Conservatives equalled their best ever results here in Wales back in 2019 with that so-called blue wall extending into North East Wales, and those seats look particularly vulnerable right now. In fact, Welsh Conservative sources have been telling me they're more worried about a total wipeout of MPs here in Wales, as happened in 1997. And due to boundary changes, as you mentioned, Wales is losing 8 MPs, which makes a number of these constituencies very difficult to call. Plaid Cymru's leader, Rhun ap Iorwerth, was also here in Carmarthenshire today, reiterating his call for what he describes as fairer funding for Wales. Keir Starmer says that a UK Labour government would work together with a Welsh Labour government more effectively. The Liberal Democrats have been wiped out here in Wales already, but are looking to make a comeback, possibly in rural mid-Wales. And don't forget about Reform UK, who, although they look unlikely to win a seat here in Wales, have now come in joint second place in not just one but a number of recent polls, which could have a significant impact on the final result.
Okay, Rhys Williams in Carmarthenshire, thank you. Northern Ireland could see one of its tightest contests ever, with more parties running for the 18 seats that are up for grabs, and some are just held by a few thousand votes. UTV's political editor Tracy McGee is in Belfast tonight. Tracy, how have the campaigns been run?
Well, in truth, there are only a handful of the 18 seats here in Northern Ireland in play in this election. However, the outcome of those contests could have far-reaching consequences. Chief among them is whether or not the main nationalist party, Sinn Féin, can take the top spot at Westminster for the first time, even though its MPs don't take their seats. Now, for the main unionist party, the DUP, it could be a difficult election in unprecedented circumstances. Today, its former leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, was in court facing historical sex offences, which he denies. Tomorrow, his old party will face the judgment of the electorate. In 48 hours, we will know if a Unionist party or a Nationalist party dominates in Westminster. And that could have far-reaching questions about whether or not there will be a border poll on Irish unity.
Okay, Tracy McGee in Belfast, thank you. Well, let's look at another contest now. And Sir Mark Cavendish has become the greatest ever stage winner in the Tour de France history, claiming an incredible 35th win.
Cavendish! It's done! It's done! The story is finally complete!
The 39-year-old rolled back the years to claim another classic sprint victory at Saint-Vulbas. The British star beat the long-standing record held by the legendary Belgian cyclist Eddy Merckx. England's men will be hoping to make some history of their own on Saturday when they face Switzerland in the quarter-finals of the Euros. Today they had their first full training session since beating Slovakia. From the England camp in Blankenheim, here's our sports editor Steve Scott.
They've been a long way from their best, but despite that, England's men are still only 2 games away from a first ever major final overseas. They're still the bookmakers' favourites too, and the nature of their last win only makes them more determined.
Everyone thought we was dead and buried, but the character of the boys, we stuck in there, and we knew there was going to be a chance falling for someone, and it fell to Jude, and Jude doing Jude things, putting in the back of the net. The relief after in the dressing room was kind of like, right now, boys, it's time to kick on. And I think we got the character and the quality of players in the dressing room to do so. So hopefully we can do that now.
England have had a couple of days to rest after Jude Bellingham's heroics and their energy-sapping extra-time win over Slovakia. Even in a German backwater, many miles from the closest Euros tournament stadium, Bellingham cannot escape attention. He and England are still waiting to hear whether he'll be charged by UEFA for an indecent gesture during last weekend's game. With Mark Gay banned, the last thing Southgate needs is a doubt over his partner John Stones, training today with heavy strapping around his knee. Regardless, Ezri Konsa is likely to get his first Euros start in Gay's place.
If I do start, it'd be a proud moment for me and my family. It's something that I've dreamt about as a kid, growing up watching the Euros and the World Cups, wanting to be in there myself and wanting to, to start a game. So it's not my decision. I don't know what's going to happen on Saturday, but if I do start, I'll always be ready.
Unquestionably, Switzerland will be England's most difficult opponents to date. In their last game, the Swiss quite comfortably saw off the current European champions, Italy. Another underwhelming performance from the Three Lions almost certainly won't be good enough. Gareth Southgate notches up a century of matches as manager this weekend. His obvious challenge to help his stuttering squad find its A-game. If he doesn't, it'll be 100 and out. Steve Scott, ITV News, Blankenheim.
Well, coming up before Emmerdale, Andy Murray and Emma Raducanu delight tennis fans, announcing they'll play mixed doubles at Wimbledon.
And the smell here in this Rose Marquee is absolutely divine. The weather, not so much. Join me for the full forecast in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Alex and I will be back after the break. Hope to see you then. Hello again, time for the weather now, and Alex is at the Hampton Court Flower Show, all looking very fragrant, Alex.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mary, and also to everyone watching at home. You're right, we're at the Hampton Court Palace Flower Festival, where the weather has been pretty mediocre today. However, here in the Rose Marquee, it has been anything but. The smell is divine and it really flirts with the senses, and I'm sure you'll agree the roses also look spectacular. In fact, they are looking so good, partly down to the weather. Yes, remember the heat wave that we had over a week ago? It feels like a very long time ago, but it was that influx of heat that really helped to bring the roses out. However, in order for them to last throughout the festival, they then had to freeze them. I'm sure you'd agree they are all looking blooming lovely. However, the weather today has been a little under par, particularly the temperatures, which have been below average for the time of year. Let's get a quick check on our temperature comparison, and you can see across some of the biggest cities up and down the UK, temperatures have been 1, 2, maybe 3 degrees below average, and it is set to stay that way as we head through the next few days. Let's take a look at the pressure pattern setup as well, and you can see what's going to happen as we head through the next couple of days. You can see outbreaks of rain, or showery outbreaks of rain across the north tomorrow, and then on Friday we're going to get another band of rain come in affecting southern parts of the UK. That could well stop play at Wimbledon on Friday, so we'll be keeping a close watch on that. As for the wider forecast for the next few days, let's take a look right now.
Today will be lovely to start with before quickly spreading to all parts later. Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, it certainly is going to be staying fairly unsettled, changeable as we head through the next few days. So across northern parts, we'll certainly see some showery outbreaks of rain tomorrow. More rain to come on Friday, but in the south and all the while, temperatures will be remaining on the cool side. But let's get a quick check-in on the situation for this evening and overnight. And you can see across northern parts of Britain, those showers already starting to develop across much of Scotland, where they could be quite heavy. The winds also picking up, but further south, it's a much calmer, quiet night to come. Clear breaks, but temperatures certainly holding up in double digits, but across the north, maybe falling down to say 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, but maybe even a bit colder than that in rural parts and across some of the sheltered glens of Scotland. So as we go into tomorrow then, well, let's stick with that rain up across the north, and that is going to be quite impactful as we head through the daytime. The winds also whipping up as well. That will have an effect on the feel and also those temperatures across northern parts. Further south though, it's going to be drier and brighter, but temperatures still expected to be 1 or 2 degrees below average for the time of year. And then as we push on into Friday, I mentioned that front coming in across the south. That's going to sweep its way across southern counties of England and Wales, and that will, as I say, cause some possible disruption at Wimbledon on a Friday. And then it stays changeable as we head into the weekend as well. So always a chance of some showers, and those temperatures going nowhere upwards for the time being.
Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.
It's not great weather for Wimbledon, but some good news today, because just a day after disappointing his many fans by withdrawing from the singles, Sir Andy Murray has hit back with a real winner. He's announced he's joining forces with Emma Raducanu in the mixed doubles. It is a dream team for spectators and the All England club, of course. The only question now, what should they be called? Here's Ellie Pitt.
We knew this would be Andy Murray's last Wimbledon, but we didn't know how he'd say goodbye. And this morning, a surprise announcement that he's pairing up with Emma Raducanu for the mixed doubles. 3 years ago, they were filmed here practicing. Is this a glimpse of what we can expect from the British duo? Excitement about the partnership was already building as the news reached fans at the tournament earlier.
Andy Murray, well, I'm from Scotland. He's the king.
Really look forward to seeing him, and hopefully Emma can come back to her previous best self.
When Andy Murray was making his professional debut, Emma Raducanu was 3 years old. But it wasn't long before she picked up a racket, and then at the age of 18 she won the US Open in New York. The pair have followed each other's careers closely.
What she did in New York was very special.
And perhaps it was this interview that she gave 2 years ago that planted the thought in Murray's mind.
Your dream's double partner, you have said already, is? Andy Murray.
Murray's won the men's singles at Wimbledon twice, but after back surgery 11 days ago has decided he won't play solo this time. Instead, he's doubling up with his brother and now Emma. But the crowd here are still a bit stuck for a team name for the Wildcards.
Ruddy? I thought Marrakesh got something.
Ruddy. I'm going with Ruddy.
Ruddy.
Yeah, cute.
Oh, that's
Nice. Team Ruddy. For the win.
The name might take a bit more work, but Raducanu's victory this afternoon has given fans hope this could be an ideal pairing for Murray's farewell. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
And that is all from us for now. Julie's here with the latest at the latest time, 20 past 10, but from me and all the team here. Bye-bye.